Hello again, I am Blunty. With the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X juggernauting their way onto shelves by the end of the year, 4K capture is going to be higher on the want list of streamers and YouTubers and content creators in general than it ever has been. I mean, current generation consoles can output in 4K. Sometimes they even render games in 4K. Most of the time they just kind of cheat and up-res it using sort of trickery. But, you know, point I'm driving at is with the real 4K console generation coming, the 1080p capture cards are going to be out, and the 4K capture cards are going to be way more interesting and useful. But which one to choose? But we do have a sponsor for this video as well, so let's take a moment, tip our hat to them, and thank them for helping me not starve to death, and for being a trusted source of quite a lot of the stuff you as a content creator, streamer, either established or aspirational, will want and need to get the job done in general. Newegg. And if you've somehow managed not to hear about them before, Newegg is an online retailer specialized in everything tech, such as laptops, desktops, PC parts, gaming consoles, and much, much more. You can buy the best brands from the USA and have it shipped directly to Australia, if you're like me and happen to be here in Australia. This month, Newegg has special promotions for you. You can buy the best processors, motherboards, graphics cards, and memory and have it shipped for free. Plus, if you use Bitcoin, you can use it when shopping with Newegg. You can save 75 Australian dollars off when you spend 465 Australian dollars or more and use the promo code BTCJuneAus. So BTC, Bitcoin, June, the month, Oz, Australia. Easy to remember, right? I'll put it in the down below for you just in case. And it's on the screen. Just use it at checkout before June the 22nd and you're golden. So thank you, Newegg. These are the two that sit in my machine normally. This is the Elgato 4K 60 Pro. This is the Mark II version, the currently available version. There is an earlier version, which I have right there. It's big and chunky and you can't buy it anymore, so I don't need to worry about that too much. But if you do have one of these, suffice to say in this video, yeah, it's worth upgrading to one of these because it's better in every way. The other one I have here is the AVerMedia 4K capture card, whose model number I never remember off the top of my head, so I'll put it on screen. That one, C1 something or other. How close was I? So in today's video, I'm going to break down the core differences between these two major choices in the internal 4K capture card play space and why you would want to choose one or the other. And I speak from experience because I have both of these installed in my machine and have done for quite some time now. I use them basically every single day, so my opinion should count for something. And before we get started, this isn't going to be a review of either card. I'm just going to talk about in general terms why you'd want to choose one or the other, what are the advantages of certain feature sets, because I'm assuming if you're looking into buying a 4K capture card, you probably already know the basics of what they're supposed to be doing. But actually streaming in 4K is still somewhat impractical and kind of pointless, thanks to the high compression and limited bit rates that you actually need to squirt out video to services like Switch. 4K is just... It's not a thing you should even be thinking about doing. But recording it for producing on-demand content, such as YouTube here, for example, is somewhat a much bigger deal. And even if you're only interested in streaming, which of course will be at 1080p or 720p, being able to view and play locally in 4K is still a very nice thing to be able to do. And both of these can do that because they both got pass-through outputs on them. So you can go in to record and the pass-through just squirts that signal out with no extra processing. So it doesn't introduce any lag or anything, just squirts it out to another monitor so you can play as per normal. And both these cards will pass through HDR. Both these cards will pass through various, frame rates and resolutions and things like that. So that's all much of a muchness between the two. And of course, both will let you set it up so you can stream out at 1080p, but record locally in 4K through OBS or XSplit or whatever. You can set up your streaming and recording resolutions separately in both those. But in doing so, you will also be recording all your overlays, all your alerts, your little bars for your, your tips and your chat stuff and your webcam and whatever else you've got on your screen while you're streaming to sort of enhance the interactivity element of that live stream thing. And only one of these cards will also let you record a completely clean 4K gameplay by using a secondary program. And it's this one. But I actually primarily use this one myself because while it has slightly fewer bells and whistles than this one, it does something that this doesn't quite do, and it has to do with latency. Now, the original Elgato 4K capture card had quite a significant latency on it, which I really didn't enjoy very much. The new model, which you can get these days, improves on that quite a lot, but it still doesn't match up to this. And I'm showing you some examples on screen to tell you what I'm talking about at the moment. Now, because they all have seamless pass-through, latency doesn't necessarily impact your ability to play the game, so long as you are using that playthrough, trying to play off the preview screen. No matter how small the latency is, there's always going to be some latency because of how these things work to begin with, so that'd be silly. But the point of the latency being the issue is if you are doing streaming or live or recording live commentary or anything like that, or using a webcam as an inset and things like that, the latency can be an issue because, of course, when you're talking, when you're reacting, how your face moves, what you're saying, it may not perfectly align with what actually is happening on screen. There's a small disconnect there, which some people never notice, but some people in the audience will. It always feels just a little bit off. And like I said, the Mark II of the Elgato card improved that quite a lot, but the AVerMedia still is better in that regard. So if that is vitally important to you, this would be the way to go. But you can still get away with this because the latency, the difference between them isn't that huge. And again, I'll show you some examples on screen so you can see what I'm talking about. It's not massive, but it is there. And if you particularly care about that, that is something you should be weighing up in your decision-making process. Both of these cards are capable of recording HDR. Now, I'm not a big fan of HDR. Yes, it looks pretty as long as you've invested in a decent HDR screen, and a lot of HDR screens are not particularly good at doing HDR. There's a lot of complexities and vagaries there. But point is, if you care about HDR, both of these will pass through HDR to your viewing side. Both of these can record in HDR. So if you're editing afterwards and applying sort of color grading and squishing it down afterwards, so you can upload it as a regular SDR video to YouTube for more convenient viewing, that's all fine. But only one of these cards will convert HDR to SDR on the fly, and it's the Elgato. The reason you would want to do this is because there's no point streaming out HDR to a streaming platform because your entire audience isn't going to be watching in HDR. So anyone not on a specific HDR display, your stream is going to look terrible. It's going to look washed out and awful. What the Elgato does to get around that is it does something called tone mapping, and it does it on the fly seamlessly. So you can be playing your game on your screen in glorious, beautiful HDR. You can even be recording it in HDR if you like, but you can also stream it out in regular SDR, so it looks quite normal to anyone watching on a regular, normal, non-HDR screen. This can't do that. Again, this does cope with HDR, it can record HDR, but it can't do that tone mapping trick. There is a way around that in programs like OBS. You can sort of put filters on this to try and color correct it after the fact, but it never works really that fantastically, and it's a lot of fuss, and you really have to know what you're doing to be able to do it right, otherwise it's going to make it look worse. This makes life much easier if you're not a video nerd, and quite a lot of streamers aren't. All you have to do is look at how they've got the stream set up to know they really don't know what they're doing. They're just following tutorials and hope it works at the end of the day. This is going to make your life easier unless you want to be a super big video nerd and get really complicated and you enjoy fiddling with that stuff, as some of us do, but this is going to be time saver. This just works. You know what I mean? Just works when it comes to HDR, SDR conversion, streaming, recording, all that kind of stuff. But as far as I'm concerned, there is one trick the Elgato does that's going to make it the winner come next generation specifically when it comes to this type of stuff. And it is the fact that the Elgato is the only one of these two cards that can talk to two separate programs at the same time. With the AVerMedia, and pretty much any other capture card on the market, actually, once it's sort of hooked into a recording program, either its own software or OBS, you can't load up another piece of program and get the same feed from the card. It's just go, nope, this device is in use, and Windows is like, no, I can't do anything with that. Someone else is using that. Try something else. This, however, Elgato have been really clever with this, and it's genius stuff. This will, so you can use this in OBS while you're streaming with all your overlays and all your alerts and things like this, but you can also run Elgato's own software side by side, and it can record a completely clean plate of your gameplay, just the gameplay and just the gameplay audio, and you can do it in 4K, regardless of whether you're streaming in 720p or 1080p or whatever. So if you are a content producer that does highlight reels, or you want to record your gameplay in the background if you're streaming it, but you also might want to produce a review down the road or something like that, this is absolutely the way to go, because being able to record two different sessions at the same time, one stream with all your overlays, one completely clean, it's a game changer as far as post-production goes. So when it comes down to picking between these two, I really like this because, well, quite frankly, it has been bulletproof since day one. The Elgato, the hardware has been brilliant. Elgato's hardware is always brilliant. It's their software side of things that lets them down. I have more problems with Elgato's software than anything else when it comes to, this whole streaming and or YouTuber kind of thing. There's been more than one occasion where on the various Elgato products, I've had to reinstall the drivers, reinstall the software, completely uninstall the drivers, manually uninstall the drivers in order to reinstall them properly just to get things to work. And I've done that more than once. It's been pretty stable over the last 6 months or so, so they've gotten better, but I've had zero problems with this Since the very first moment I plugged it into my machine. You don't even need to install its own software. You can just plug it in, it'll work straight away in OBS anyway. But its own software is also better than what Elgato do for various reasons, actually. So between the class-leading, extremely low latency on this thing and just the reliability of it and its software, this is a tremendously good choice. This, more sophisticated, a little bit more fiddly, a little bit more pain in the ass sometimes because of how their software works, but the more feature-rich options of this, the way it does that tone mapping, the way it does enable you to record in two completely separate sources at the same time, this is going to be sort of my main recommendation for the coming generation, because when you're dealing with these machines that are essentially natively 4K beasties, they're designed to be 4K gaming beasties, that ability to record the 4K stream or even HDR 4K stream, but still stream out a tone-mapped 1080p stream. It opens so many doors when it comes to content production that it's hard to deny this. But yeah, I am going to be keeping both of these in my machine because I have both of them and they happily live side by side, and I do use them in tandem for various things. But if you have to choose one or the other, hopefully this video has been informative for you. I can't tell you which one's going to work best for you. What I've done here is try to explain what the major benefits of each of them are, and you make your decision based on what your priorities are. So let me know in the comments, what do you reckon? What are you going to go for? Do you even care that much about 4K? And have, of course, exclusively been talking about the internal cards because they are a less fussy option. You can, of course, there are 4K external capture card options out there, some very good ones. If you would like a video on those, please let me know down below. I prefer not to use them because, particularly with 4K external capture cards, USB bandwidth can be an issue. It's limited on your machine, and most motherboards have two separate sort of USB banks, as it were. One will go to a chipset on the motherboard, one goes directly into the CPU. Certain things that require lots and lots of bandwidth, you really want to concentrate on the one that goes directly to the CPU so you don't have any other things in the system messing with it on its way back through, and it can cause issues. And if you're soaking up too much bandwidth on your capture card, you might cause issues for your things like your microphone. I've had that happen a few times before and had to solve that issue for a couple of my streamer friends when they were starting out. They were, oh, why does my microphone always sound weird? Or, oh, well, change the USB port. So that's a fuss. So if you can, definitely go for the internal ones, is my advice. But anyway, thank you very much for watching. Hopefully this has been interesting and informative and useful if you are making that choice, or if you're just looking for a validation for a choice you've already made between these two and were worried about, oh, did I make the wrong choice? No, you probably didn't. Either choice is a good choice. But I am Blind. I will catch you next time, and a special thank you, as always, to the people floating above there, my Patreons, special above and beyond supporters. Thank you so much for your extra support. It is super duper meaningful. Speaking of extra support, thank you again to Newegg, I guess, for your extra support too. Go do the thing. Use the code. Get cheap. Free shipping, Bitcoin, etc.